October is one of my most favorite months of the year because I love fall. It's also a hard month for me now because it is Pregnancy and Infant Loss Awareness Month, and I may have known that before my first miscarriage, and now that I know it, October has pain for me because it's not only a reminder of the losses that I've had, but I also am now sensitive to it for my friends and family who have experienced similar pain. In fact, today I'm devastated to learn that one of my colleagues just recently, I think even yesterday, lost their baby, and that my heart just goes out to them. And it got me thinking as to how I would reach out to them, what would be useful for them based on my experience and what I appreciated. And so I quickly realized that there were at least 3 things that I wanted to do that I found beneficial when I had my miscarriages that people did for me. And I wanted to share them with you in case it's helpful, or you want to say, I want to acknowledge this, I don't know how, or I don't know what people appreciate. And of course it varies. I recognize that not everybody acknowledges it or processes it in the same way. And that's fine. These are just ideas and ways that I've determined that were really beneficial for me. And the first thing is acknowledge it. And you acknowledge it by simple ways of saying, I'm so sorry for your loss. Can I give you a hug if they're a hugger, or if you're a hugger? Just acknowledging it, not avoiding it. What I so appreciated when I came back to work after my 3rd miscarriage, which everybody knew that I was pregnant beforehand, and so then everybody knew I wasn't when I came back to work, was that so many people simply said, the first time they saw me, and it's going to make me emotional because it meant a lot, they just said, I'm so sorry. And just the acknowledgement of that fact made me feel like the emotions that I was feeling were valid, that I had a reason for them. Even though the emotions may vary across the spectrum, the fact that people acknowledged that I had a reason to feel different really made a difference. And so if you want to reach out to those around that are experiencing miscarriage and pregnancy loss, that is a way to do it. Acknowledge it and just simply say, I'm sorry. And you know what? You don't need to say anything else, because usually when one starts to say something more than that, then it becomes potentially not helpful, because then things are said that aren't meant to be negative, but could be, depending on the person and how they take things. So now that I'm crying all over myself, let's see if I can move through this. So the first way is to acknowledge it. The second thing to do is to actually put something in writing as soon as you learn about their miscarriage, as soon as you learn about their loss. Write a written note. That's a lost start nowadays. A text is appropriate as well. That's not necessarily a bad thing. And something written is something tangible that I found really dear to my heart, because for me, I created what I call my Z box, because I have had 3 miscarriages, all 3 of them boys. And for me, I found it beneficial to name them after I determined their gender. And so they all have names that start with Z. So I have my Z box. And to have a physical card to put into that box really helped heal my soul, because not only could I recognize that this was a safe place to put my emotions, but I could also go back and visit it at a later point when I recognized that I needed to express my emotions or work through emotions. So that's a way to do it, is to put up or to give a physical note. And the third thing is ask them how they're doing. You may not really want to know, and I totally get that, because when emotions of that level are involved, it can be perceived as really messy, because especially if you're not familiar with emotions, or even if you are and you recognize how deep and how dirty it can get to muck around in those level of emotions, it's okay to ask. Just say, how are you doing? Most likely the person won't go into full detail, and of course they do. You're very welcome to suggest that they go to a professional, a counselor, or something along that line, to where they can really hash out these emotions. And I found that so helpful when people said, how are you doing, like a week or so later. And typically people think about something like this for about a month. And so if you even remember after a month to ask, because honestly, that's kind of when the emotions really kick in, because the numbness has largely worn off by that point, and the emotions are just raw. And that's usually when people expect you to move on. The problem is the emotions are raw at that point, And so asking how you're doing really allowed me, people asking me how I was doing really allowed me to articulate how I was feeling and to feel comfortable saying today's not a good day. It's really freeing, and it also creates a safe environment for expressing emotion, which nowadays we don't really allow for certain emotions, and pain and sorrow are things that we tend to keep hidden, at least in the first world US society. So those are just three things. One, acknowledge, I'm sorry, just acknowledge the event. Number two, ask them how they're doing, or I guess that was number three. And then the other one is to send a note, a physical note, a text, some type of acknowledgement, just so that they have something to hold on to, that people care for them and are thinking about them through their process. One note I want to say about this has really been sitting on my heart. So many people reached out to me, which I'm so grateful for. And you know how many people reached out to my husband? You know, maybe 3 people outside of our immediate family. And that's not to say that people don't care about my husband. In fact, to be honest, my husband is of the combo of us, he's the desired person to have around. He's the outgoing, energetic, extroverted, just fun guy. And yet I find that people don't acknowledge him, and he's part of this loss. And men, of course, process things differently than women, and so I know it's a different experience for him, but I was, and he even voiced it, especially the third time, that our most recent miscarriage. He said people would walk in the room and say, "Erin, how are you doing?" And he's sitting right there, and it's not like he didn't have anything to do with it. It takes 2 to create a baby. So don't forget the father, don't forget the dad, don't forget to reach out. They are processing it too, and frequently, because society says men can't cry and men shouldn't have emotions, they don't know what to do with their emotions. They don't know what to do with the process of this event, and also support their wife. Or it's something that needs to be acknowledged, and simply reaching out and saying, "Hey, how are you doing? Hey, I just talked with your wife, just checking in with you." Simple things like that I think will make a huge difference. And so as we remember those who have had this horrible and tragic and traumatic event happen, of a miscarriage, a stillbirth, a loss of an infant, of a baby, I want to acknowledge you. I want to say I am so sorry for your loss. And I also want to say I'm with you. I want you to know that I really care how you're doing. Leave comments. I've had a couple people comment, and it's made my day to know that we've created a community by saying it's okay to have these emotions. It's okay to be so upset about something that has happened months and maybe years ago. It's okay. And we're here to help each other. So blessings to all of you, and I pray this has been helpful.